So I'll talk about Deb first. This is our recipient, but let me give you a little history about it. The Legacy Award was established in 2015 and recognizes individuals for their immense and exemplary service to the insurance industry and to this chapter of CPCU. Honorees demonstrate commitment, honor, integrity, and set a noteworthy example of personal and professional conduct, and whose accomplishments place this individual apart from those in the insurance industry. It is my honor today to introduce this year's recipient of the CPCU Legacy Award is Deborah Rokoleski. With nearly 50 years of experience, she started when she was 10, in the property and casualty industry and more than 4 decades dedicated to professional liability, Deb has built an extraordinary career defined by leadership, innovation, and service. She's held key roles in underwriting, in reinsurance, in education, including 10 years as Director of Education for PLUS, Professional Liability Underwriting Society, where she oversaw several initiatives there, including the Registered Professional Liability Underwriter, the RPLU, and I've seen that title on the board several times today. That designation program. She developed the PLUS curriculum. She co-founded the Medical Professional Liability Symposium. Deb was a Senior Vice President at Arthur J. Gallagher and served in many different roles, including drafting and negotiating all reinsurance contracts and wording. She was a Vice President also at Willis, where she oversaw all aspects of the reinsurance negotiation and responsibilities there. She has also given her time and talent as a trustee for the trust, as well as through long-standing volunteer work with other professional organizations, community groups, and global educational initiatives. Throughout her career, Deb has not only advanced the profession, but has mentored, educated, and inspired countless colleagues along the way. She's certainly been a friend to some of our students over the years who have interned with her, and she has mentored. She has been a huge supporter, again, of our insurance program here at MTSU since as long as I can remember, and I've been here a long time. And she's been on our advisory board, the Insurance Liaison Committee, and in many roles with our insurance program throughout the years. Her impact will be felt for generations, making her a truly fitting recipient of the CPCU Legacy Award. She's also a very long-time good friend of mine, and I could not be more excited to present her this award. Please join me in congratulating the 2025 Legacy Award honoree, Deborah Rokoleski.
I just want to thank Dr. Zietz, the CPCU board that made the decision. Also a nod to Dr. Holman, because he was really the one that got me involved with MTSU. I met him, I've been here in Nashville almost 40 years, and I met Dr. Holman very early on. And so he got me involved with MTSU, and I met Dr. Zietz. Also like to thank my family. My husband is retiring from surgery, so he's not here. And my daughter couldn't make it. I traveled her whole life from the time before she was born, so I think she did okay. Rumor has it that when I was traveling, David Burton had bad manners and we could have Chuck E. Cheese, so it was a win-win because I didn't have to go to Chuck E. Cheese. This is really humbling for somebody who began their career as a rate clerk, and which is probably something that most people in this room have never heard of because it's obsolete. Back in the day, we actually sat down with a calculator and determined what premiums that would be charged on homeowners or auto or whatever kind of policy. I had a degree in business, and when I entered the industry out of college, first of all, there were female the reason was maybe a little different from today, in that it was more of a, if a woman wants to get ahead in this business, she needs to have the credentials sort of thing. But, you know, it definitely got me started. And I can't say that I had a grand plan to get multiple designations. That sort of happened organically over the years. I don't know if any of you had dealt with Connor Harrison, who was at the Institute for years and oversaw the associate in underwriting program. But after I got my CPCU, and I was still up in Pennsylvania at the time, and they were looking for someone to teach the AU courses. So Connor had reached out to me, and so I started teaching the AU, and I figured if I know the material well enough to teach it, I probably should go ahead and take the exam on it. So I literally took the exams with my students, and then moved from Pennsylvania to, kind of the second lesson I was going to talk about was, I'm a firm believer in the old adage, when one door closes, another one opens. So sometimes things that happen in our careers that are tough or seem like a setback can really be a big opportunity. The company that I was a senior personal lines underwriter for, I worked for a big regional office in central Pennsylvania, and with the ebb and flow of the insurance industry, they decided to downgrade that office to a branch. So they basically cut the staff and let more than half of the employees go. And they were moving operations up to northern New Jersey. And so it was kind of a good news, bad news. I was one of a handful of people that were offered transfers. But unfortunately, they were offering me about a 10% increase in salary, and the cost of living was about 75% higher. And I went up there and checked it out, and you know, this was a tough decision. I was single and had a nice little house, and went up and spent what I still refer to as the most miserable day of my life, looking at housing options up in northern New Jersey, which were, at least to get anything that I could even possibly afford, I was talking about a hard hour commute to the office. And the raise they were offering me wasn't even going to cover the difference in property insurance, property tax. So I decided I was better off in central Pennsylvania on unemployment. And I was really kind of looking for a change anyway. And so that really was one of the first, probably the biggest opportunity in my whole career, in that I went to work for my first medical malpractice company, Pennsylvania Hospital Insurance Company. And that really sent my career in a whole different trajectory. And I was so thankful that I did that. I started there as a physician underwriter, and then worked up to underwriting facilities and hospitals and healthcare systems. And after I'd been there a few years, I was recruited to Virginia to work for a similar company in Virginia. So moved to Virginia, and that was a pretty easy decision to make because I'm an underwriter. Actually, I steal a term from one of my prior bosses, is that I'm a recovering underwriter, because I think I've always been at heart an underwriter, because that was such a big part of my career. But you know, underwriting, similar type company. I had lived in Richmond before. I knew people there. I had family nearby. So that was an easy decision. But only about 8 or 9 months into that job, I was recruited by what was then Prune and Black, now Willis, to healthcare risk management group. And a few months in, so I only knew her 2 or 3 months. And when they had an opening for an account manager in the reinsurance group, she recommended me. So that was a big decision because it was going from the company side to the brokerage side, which I had interest in. Also going into reinsurance versus primary insurance. And I basically knew one person in Nashville, and I only known her a couple months. But I decided to take the leap and do that. And again, would never have had that opportunity had I not had the credentials and the background in MedNow. Because the fortunate thing about getting into medical malpractice at that point was MedNow specifically, and even the professional liability industry as a whole, was really new at that point. I mean, it was just coming out of the first big MedNow crisis of the 70s, and it was when they were, different states were starting their own physician companies and that sort of thing. And so again, it really kind of got in on the more on the ground floor level, and then, that created a lot of opportunities going forward. For some of the new students and people that are newer in their career, one of my other lessons I learned was make friends with the risk management people and the claims professionals, because you learn so much from them. And particularly when I got into it now, the underwriting process itself is pretty much the same no matter what line of coverage you're talking about. But obviously, I didn't have the medical background, and I didn't understand all the necessary risk factors and that sort of thing. So, I had obviously a lot of more senior underwriters that I could work with, but also getting to know the claims and the risk management people they were gold. Because if I had questions when I was trying to decipher a loss run, whatever, they could answer those questions for me. And a lot of times they have the best stories too, so something to think about too. Some of the themes we've already talked about today in the different people that have spoken before me. Obviously, the networking connections are critically important. When I was recruited to move to Virginia, that was the last time I never had to look for another job after that. I'll put it that way. I was recruited to Virginia. I was recruited to Green and Black through that contract. When my job was downsized, position eliminated at Willis, the gentleman that hired me for Gallagher, I knew him from having gone to a training seminar with him. Back in the day, we were talking about captives. Tillinghast, which I guess now Tillinghast Towers Parent is all part of Willis too. Tillinghast actuarial firm ran a whole week seminar on how to run a captive. And again, these were as all these new companies were getting started. And so I had gone to that seminar, and Phil and I had been on the same team. And so later on, when his reinsurance book was getting bigger and he needed, somebody to work with him, he recruited me for that. So I had about almost 10 years, almost 9 years at Gallagher. And then in the midst of all that, too, one of the other big opportunities I had was getting involved in Professional Liability Underwriting Society when it was very new. I happened to see the ads when they were having their first couple conferences. The first international conference I went to, I think it was about 125 people. It was tiny, where now that draws about 2,000 a year. Got involved with Plus and was going to their events, and they had started the RPLU program, the Registered Professional Liability Underwriter program. You know, obviously, you know, there's a wealth of knowledge available through the institutes, but, you know, whether you're looking at CPCU content, and maybe it's changed some now, but this is years ago, or the AU, you know, you might get a couple chapters on directors and officers liability. You might get one chapter on medical malpractice. So, you know, some of the kind of founding fathers of PLUS had seen the need for professional liability, educational opportunity, and designation. So when they were putting together their first formal education committee, and again, PLUS was very small at that point. I think they had 400 or 500 members total. And they literally went through the membership roster and looked for people that had multiple designations to see if they were interested in working on the PLUS educational products. So I was invited to join that education committee. Little did they know they weren't going to be able to get rid of me, but that was the start of 23 years working with PLUS. 13 as a volunteer on the national level. Was on the education committee, ultimately chaired it. In the late 90s, they were already doing an international directors and officers liability symposium up in New York every year, and that had gotten some traction and was a very, very established event. And by around the year 1999, 2000, about a quarter of the membership was in medical professional liability. So a gentleman named Paul Grieve and I went to the board and proposed that we start the medical professional liability symposium, which was terrifying. I didn't really know. I knew one or two people on the board, but I wasn't one of the kind of insiders at that point. We went to them, pitched our idea. The board at the time was heavily executive liability, D&O folks, so they were a little skeptical about it. But they decided to let us run with it and plan small, try it out, see what happened. So we had the first one in Chicago, planned for about 250 and ended up overselling. It was about 300. So that was 2001. So I'm excited to say that next year will be the 25th anniversary of that symposium. So it's still going strong, and attendance levels had dropped a little bit, but last year it had more people there than they'd had in a while. So that's one of their bigger money-making events. And Paul and I chaired that conference, that symposium for the first 3 years. Then I was asked to be on the board. And then during that period, the RPLU curriculum designation had gone through several iterations of materials. For a long time, they used some combinations of some of the reference materials from IRMI, International Risk Management Institute. But we did a big consulting project and did a very holistic plan for what we wanted the curriculum to look like in going forward. And so eventually created 23-volume curriculum. First 8 are kind of the basics that everybody in professional liability should know. And then the other 15 are all specialty courses. So if somebody just wants to learn about architects and engineers or something specific, they can just take one course, or they're the building blocks for their designation. And they have some flexibility with electives and that sort of thing. So it's really exciting to see the RPLU program grow over the years and see it become established in the professional liability world. Most of the people in my era, had CPCUs. So there were a lot of the earlier RPLUs were double. They had they went ahead and got work when they were focused on professional. One of the other things we started that came out of that consulting study was Plus University, which is a program for people that are brand new to the professional liability industry. So it's just a couple days of intense, on-site learning with experts in the industry, and even the students for that had changed over the years, because the first couple of years it happened to be people that had been in the industry for a while, but then certainly even when I was still there, before I retired, we would have new students that had just graduated from college coming and being hired for professional and coming to it. So anyway, those were some of the things that I was involved in. Especially the big change going from the industry of brokerage into Plus and association was, again, that was a big change, and took some thinking. It's a big step. Definitely working with volunteers is a whole new world. So one of the things I've learned was, don't be afraid to ask. We had a lot of very, very knowledgeable, people that were very giving of their time, that, spoke at events, worked on the curriculum, helped in whatever way. And kind of the last thing I had on my list was just to be kind. I think about my Angelou quote, about people will forget what you said, they forget what you did, they'll remember how you treat them. And certainly working with some individuals over the years that had big jobs and big egos and maybe not really these personalities, I think that works. And certainly a lot of the things have already been discussed in terms of relationships and being involved in professional organizations